Hey guys, we're going to look at writing equations from a graph today. So if we are given a graph, how can we write an equation? So our goal is to write the equation in its best form. We've learned about the three forms: slope-intercept, standard, and point-slope. And we're going to look at, looking at the graph, which form is it best that I write my graph in, and be able to write the equation from there. So there's a little graphic that we can use to help us identify which form we should write our equation in. The first step is to see, is the y-intercept clearly seen? Clearly seen means, is it at a pretty point, okay? Is it a place where we can say, yes, the y-intercept is 4, or no, it's not, it's kind of in between two whole numbers. So if it is, then you should write the equation in slope-intercept form, because you can find the y-intercept, right? It's easily seen, and then we can use another point on the line to find our slope. If it's not easily seen, then it's best to write it in point-slope form by first finding any point on the line. That's any point, it doesn't matter where it is, just find a pretty intersection, pretty point, okay? And then find a second point and find the slope, and then write it in y minus y1 equals m, parentheses x minus x1. So if you look here on the right-hand side of your notes, it says start. Is the y-intercept clearly seen and or a pretty point? Right, if you notice on the side that says no, our point where it crosses the y-axis is right there. Not a super pretty point, right? It's in between 4 and 6. We can't really see if it's halfway or not, so it's not really identified well. So the best thing to do would be to identify a pretty point, and then graph it in point slope form. Right, that's what that should say. If it doesn't say that, make it say point slope. And if you do have a pretty intersection for your y-intercept, then you should graph it in slope-intercept form. So let's look at some examples. So the first thing we do, okay, if it's looking for us to write an equation, we should look at the graph and say, okay, can we see the y-intercept? I see my y-intercept right here, and it's not at a pretty point. So mentally, I'm checking, okay. I'm checking no. That y-intercept is not easily seen. And since my y-intercept isn't easily seen, it's best to write this equation in point-slope form, where we just identify one point in the slope and not slope-intercept. So because the y-intercept isn't clearly seen, so instead of finding the y-intercept, I'm going to find a point. So I'm going to look at my graph. Okay, where do I have some pretty points? Looks like I have a pretty point right there, and I also have a pretty point way down here. Didn't really look like I have any others. There were some that are close, but when I zoomed in, I saw that they didn't go through a pretty point, so I'm not going to include them. I'm just going to go ahead and write down the ordered pairs for both of my points. This one up here is negative 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this one down here is 4, negative 4. So I can pick one of those, either one of those points. I'm going to pick my my first one up there. So I'm going to choose my point, negative 1, 4. Remember, it doesn't matter. And then I need to find my slope. So I'm just going to count rise over run. I notice I'm going down, so my slope's going to be negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, down 8, and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my slope is negative 8 over 5. So I can write that. Negative 8/5. So my equation is going to be written in point slope form. which is y minus y1 equals m, parentheses x minus x1. So I'm going to take y, subtract my y value, which was 4, equals negative 8/5, parentheses x minus my x value, which was negative 1, so I can write x plus 1. And there we go. Now, if I can identify my y-intercept, like I can in example 2, then I'm going to write my equation in slope-intercept form. Because I know my y-intercept, I can see it. So in this problem, my y-intercept is 4. B is 4, right? Or it's the point 0, comma 4. I could write another point, but I don't need to for this. And then finding my slope. I'm going to use this point, and obviously I'm going to use my y-intercept. So my rise is up 1, and then over 1, 2, 3. Slope's going up, so my slope is 1/3. So I can write my equation, y equals 1/3 x plus 4. Quick and easy, guys, just learning how to write the equation. You know how to identify your y-intercept and find slope by counting rise over run, right? And hopefully you can identify just random pretty points on the graph as well. So use the two kind of graphics at the top of your notes to help you identify how you should write your equation. And remember that we learned if we find it in point slope form, we can then convert it to slope-intercept form or into standard form if we really wanted to. But we learned how to convert into slope-intercept form. So if you needed to find an answer in slope-intercept form, but it wasn't easily identifiable, start with point slope and then work from there.